Hello, my name's Christian. I just thought I'd do this bit of a video today just to go with something I've written about on my website. It's about places on Earth. I was flicking through the Bible. Let's not bother about which Bible because my name is Christian. I'm born into a Christian society and I believe in Jesus and I know God exists. I'm not an imbecile, but um, I've been trying to get people to believe in God that didn't believe in God, and the way I would do that, I tried to do that, was disprove evolution by searching, I don't know, wherever my brain would go, doing everyday tasks. I could be on the internet, I could be outside. I'd just look anywhere for things that would or could disprove evolution, and hopefully I've done it on this site. It needs brushing up. The whole site needs a revamp, which is what I'm doing now. But this is just a quick video to tell you something that I thought. I haven't got the whole of the information there, but it would be nice if there was some people out there that heard what I've got to say next, could say, he has got a point. And this point I'm making is about places written in the Bible. I think it was the 1600s that Columbus founded America. In the Bible's been a lot longer than that. It's been authenticated by people for its age and things like that. Talking about land and places on the earth, you got to believe that there's an author to the Bible, even if you don't believe. Many people believe God wrote it, but they neglect to think, well, if God didn't write it, then who did, and what influence was on the earth to enable him to write such an amazing book, or books even. Anyway, in the King James Version, which is what I've acquainted to, in the beginning it says the earth separated from the earth. God came down. He's a character in a book, isn't he, really? Somebody wrote a book about somebody called God, or God, and the way that the world was formed. So somebody a long time ago wrote a story about somebody who created the earth he was on. Yeah, he wouldn't have a lot of knowledge about the earth anyway, would he? He wouldn't, not way back then, there wouldn't be a lot of knowledge to actually think about him writing a story about the world he lived on. I mean, how do you go? There's a good point, actually. Where do you start in writing a story about the world? Because when you start going on to a story about God, you are literally talking about the world, aren't you? And by reading the Bible, you can tell that the world has been written about. So who crazily went, I'm going to write a story about a God. I'm going to call him God. He's somebody out there and he created the earth. So then they would have to have delved into knowledge of the earth and things like that. And the first bit of knowledge they made, they created the story. I think it was called Genesis. In fact, it was called Genesis in King James Version. And what does it say? God ascended onto the earth, and he separated the waters from the waters and the earth from the earth, and he created two firmaments, and he called these heavens. So somebody who wrote about the Bible, wrote about the Spirit of God, his story, his apparently made up story about his God. He came onto the earth and he separated the waters from the waters and the earth from the earth. So somebody, when the Bible was written, must have gone, them tectonic plates, I wonder if they were in one position, or were they in one place, or it looks like they've spread and they're separated. So he thought that the tectonic plates, when he decided to write about the Bible, the tectonic plates must have separated and created the earth. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to state, is that somebody before science, I just sarcastically mentioned that, somebody before science actually knew that the earth was one mass of land. So science, Christopher Hitchens, God rest his soul, he's passed away now, but Stephen Fry's still alive. and he was there when Christopher Hitchens said that the Bible is primitive. Yet whoever wrote the Bible was very, very knowledgeable. Um, and the Bible is a massive, great thing on the earth. Look at what the Bible has achieved. The author of the Bible, look what the author of the Bible or Bibles has achieved. We'll talk about that another time. But this is what I want to talk about. We talked about the tectonic plates, that the earth separated. Somebody wrote in the Bible, they decided to write about the earth, they decided to create a God and write about him and his exploits on the earth. This is what the Bible is. It's a book about the exploits of God. So if you're an atheist or somebody that doesn't believe in God, you have to believe that an author wrote about God having interventions on the earth. Yet the stories written, some of them I think, have been authenticated to be true through historians finding information on other things. So people have actually gone to a length of time to find out whether the Bible is true, and a lot of things have come out. When you think the author wrote this, and he would have had to have been extremely well travelled for a start to be able to get this information, and he would have to have been there at these acts that were being done at the time, like the story of Moses. If that's true or just made up, he would. If it is true, he would have had to have been there. Did the Egyptian god? Was he not an Egyptian god? The Egyptian pharaoh or the king or whoever he was speaking to, did he actually exist? Was this story authenticated to be true? Because otherwise it would just be fabricated, wouldn't it? And a story like the rest of the Bible. But if it is fabricated and it isn't true, then the author is well travelled on the places on the earth. So if he spoke about Asia or anywhere on earth, he must have had knowledge about the place, especially if that place is described in the Bible. It proves he was there. Yet Christopher Columbus in the 1600s, he hadn't founded America, had he? So many people apparently thought the world flat. So they couldn't have done, could they? Not everybody thought the world flat because somebody was travelling. I spoke to my priest the other day and I tried to explain this to him. I find him sometimes a little ignorant, and he says, yes, but somebody went across the ocean in a boat. And I said, that's exactly the point I'm making. How did somebody write about somebody crossing the ocean and landing at a certain place without actually doing it? You see, so these places written about on earth, somebody would have had to been well travelled to find out and write about the different places on the earth. Otherwise, it would be just a story. So how do you authenticate a story from being a real story against not being a real story about fantasy? Because people say that the Bible is fantasy. I can't see the concept of it being fantasy, because you've got to think in some ways it is scientific, because it does state that the earth was one mass of land. It just is spoken in different words. So it's God separated the earth from the earth and the waters from the waters. So the author who wrote about God, his character wrote about God coming down onto the earth, and he had the author of the Bible had this massive amount of knowledge to know that the earth was not one mass of land. It was separated, like I say. But yes, this topic that I'm talking about now is basically how did somebody verse different places upon the earth, like Asia. I'll just flip down because I've got my page on here. So we've got Babylon, Egypt, Ethiopia, Germany, Greece, India, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Italy, Lebanon, Libya, Macedonia, Malta, Palestine, Spain, Syria, Sudan, Turkey, Asia. All these places are written about in a book, right? And I know that Asia is written in the Old Testament. So Asia is in the Old Testament. So that's BC. It would be before Christ. And I'm sure Damascus was in the Old Testament as well. So going even back further than before Christ, the earth had all these different places on it, and this book wrote about these different places. And you've got to remember, these different places were written about by the author. But our Bible, King James Version, was brought together, different stories, and put together as one book. So even though you think it'd be hard, you've got more than one person travelling the earth, who is writing about relevant things to put in. So that means that they must have known each other for a start to write about these things, to put them into a book. They must have travelled. And what are the chances of several people writing these books and coming together and putting these writings together? For instance, if you go back to the to different times in Egypt, or when different kings were on the throne, were these writers rich? Could they have been in the vicinity of this thing to write the story? For instance, for somebody to write about Jesus Christ being on the cross or going to the cross, they must have been in the crowd to write about it and talk about it. When the Egyptians were involved, somebody must have been there knowing the king and knowing things around. And if things around that was described, then it was somebody that was there. So anyway, I think that's it for now. I think you're going to get the general idea. What this video entails, and this page that I've written a little bit about, is about places on earth that the author of the Bible, or authors, would have had to have gone to explain about the different places. If they hadn't never been there, how could they explain them? It's not like now that the world is so connected you can go on the internet and find something out about it. And how long would it take them to travel from one place to the other, and how old would they have been by the time they finished writing this book, the Bible? So I'm not necessarily now talking to people that have never read the Bible. I would hope by seeing this you might think, oh, that's an interesting point, that I might go and pick the Bible up to see and read about these different places on the earth that the author must have travelled to be able to speak about. And I will look at the Bible as the way that an author wrote it, and I will believe myself to be the author, and I will try and read it as an author wrote it. And you might find that the Bible is an amazing book with what it's achieved. The people I'm talking to right now are people that are well established with the Bible, that know the Bible, because I don't want to read all through it myself. Somebody out there must know about different places on the earth, and then they can explain to me how somebody wrote about all these things and knew all these things if they'd never been there. It would be impossible, wouldn't it? Okay, that's me logging off, and I'll see you again.